All right, questions.
So, I have been observing this myself that I feel depressed when I don't have something valuable like a good job, apartment, or anything. But when I have that valuable thing, right, like maybe the job that I always wanted, dreamt of, then I'm afraid that I will lose it. Like uh, it's like a lose-lose situation, and like my whole life is being dictated by this fear. So what can I do about this?
About which part of it?
Yes.
I mean, you listed a number of things. One, you feel depressed when you don't have the job and the car and the girl and the money. But then when you have the job, the car, the girl, and the money, you're afraid you'll lose them, right? And
Yeah.
this makes you depressed. So, what part of that do you want me to address?
Uh, uh, I think both of them will eventually happen. Like nothing is permanent. So what can I do to get out of this thinking or
Out of the thinking or out of the
this
depression?
out of depression? And I would argue that depression is a symptom of the thinking, of this
Good,
type of
excellent,
thinking.
good, 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 good. Yes, it is. If you thought different thoughts, you wouldn't be depressed, right?
Yeah.
All right. So now what's the question?
Uh, sorry.
Maybe it's that since you're realizing that everything is impermanent, you're thinking, well, how can I not be
Yeah.
depressed if I know that everything I accumulate in the world is going to get taken from me? Is that kind of the question? How can I not think these thoughts if they're true?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the question? I probably shouldn't try and help you out too much. Tell me what the question is, and I'll try and answer the question.
I I don't know what's happening with the signal. It's pretty shorty. Can you turn off your camera for me? I'm
Okay.
sorry for
Will we still have
these
sound?
things
Will we still
being
have
happening.
sound?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. How's that?
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
better?
That's much
Okay.
clearer.
Let's
Yeah,
keep going.
yeah, yeah. So it feels like these two thoughts, right? I am emotionally invested in these two thoughts,
Okay.
and
Which two
to be
thoughts?
frank, I
Which two
feel
thoughts? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
uh, like uh, actually I don't know. Can we cut this part out?
No,
I
let's
don't know
just keep
what.
going. That's fine. That's fine. Just so there's some thoughts that are making you depressed, or yeah, some thoughts that are making you depressed. So this is a very common problem. So we'll just it's fine. People can empathize with your situation. I certainly can. So say more. What's the question? What's the issue?
So the issue is there a way to get out of this at all? Because if
Yes,
every instant
absolutely.
of my
Yes,
life,
yes, 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 yes. There's an end to suffering.
and that would be,
Well, if you listen to the Buddhists, and they're good people to listen to. They say that the cause of suffering is attachment, attachment to things, attachment to concepts, attachment to self-concept, attachment to self. With a small s. So that's what they would say, and they would say that there's a way to get rid of that also, right?
okay.
So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is there's every reason to be hopeful. This is not a permanent condition. This is a temporary condition, probably there to help guide you to where you need to get. You know who's a master of explaining this is Eckhart Tolle. You know, that guy had a serious depression to where he was going to kill himself. And then he woke up, and he hypothesizes that suffering is there in order to bring us to truth. And that without that suffering, we just kind of go along. Well, you know, look at the Buddha himself. The Buddha had it all. The guy was a prince. He was going to be king. He lived in a palace. He had everything. All the women, all the wine, all the song, all the gold and jewelry, and anything you could want. The guy, he was it. But he went outside the palace one day and he saw all these old people on the side of the street, you know, and they were poor old people. And then he saw that some of them were sick, and there were younger people too that were sick. And he didn't know what that was, because he'd been shielded from all of that. He'd never seen the suffering in the world, and he'd never really seen old age and what it does to people. And so he asked, he said, "What's that?" And they said, "Oh, that's old age." And he said, "Well, what's that?" And they said, "Well, that's sickness, you know, that's leprosy, or that's, you know, some horrible infection, or that's somebody who's crippled because of nutritional deficiency." And that really upset Buddha big time. And he realized for the first time, you know, he wasn't a child either. He was maybe in his late teens, according to the story. And he wanted to know, how do we fix this? And he became the Buddha. Now, he tried the Indian way, which was ascetic practices. You know, he didn't eat anything. He lost tons of weight. He meditated 24/7. You know, he hung out with these hardcore Hindu fakirs in the FIKIRS. And he got some places, but he didn't get very far. And so he said, you know, this can't be it. And then to make a long story short, he found the middle way of Buddhism, which is not too extreme, not too loose, not too tight, not too loose, not too much, not too little. And he learned that through a series of contemplations and meditations and a few practices that he could not only liberate himself but liberate other people, and thus Buddhism was born. So you're kind of in the same spot as the Buddha or Eckhart Tolle. So yeah, but this is not to make light of it. I mean, it hurts. It's horrible. It's a horrible suffering. Just be glad you're not drinking, because if you're drinking, it gets even worse, right? Or you're not addicted to drugs, because then you can kill yourself.
Yeah, I'm actually grateful for that. But yeah.
But I think you understand that it's your thoughts that are causing this. Not the things, it's the thoughts.
Yep.
It's the thoughts.
Yep.
Have you ever bought a flower
Yep.
just to look at its beauty?
No.
Try it sometime. Find a beautiful flower somewhere. I'm sure you have them in India, and just put it somewhere where you can look at it and watch it, and you'll see this extraordinary beauty, this incredible beauty of a flower. And then after a few days, you'll start to see the beauty start to change, and then it slowly decomposes and turns into death, and it's no longer alive, and you can see the impermanence. So that impermanence is not a bug. It's not a feature. It's not a bug. It's a feature. Only with impermanence can we appreciate beauty and love and you know, with a small L, and the gifts that we were given in our lifetime, our parents, our children, our you know, the air that we breathe, you know, clean water, good food if we have it, and it's only that way that we can appreciate what we have. And so I think if you just continue to contemplate this, because you're doing well, if you understand that it's the thoughts and the attachment to those thoughts that is at the root of the depressive feelings, and you just accept the fact that to be attached to something is to be foolish, because nothing lasts on this earth. And you said that yourself. So I'd say you're making good progress, and this is just part of the process. So I'm sorry it hurts as much as it does. If hurts is the right word. You suffer. But the Buddha said, that there's an end to suffering. And he's right. The others talk about it in different ways. You can enter the kingdom of heaven. There's a way to past all this. And in the religions, they speak about another, in the fundamentalist versions of the religion, they talk about another time after life. But there's no reason to dally in any case. And in all of them, to be an impeccable warrior is the path. Right? Okay?
Yes.
Is that kind of what you need? Is that okay? Go ahead, follow up. Good.
Yeah, so why would someone be emotionally attached at all? What's the core reason for this?
It's biology. I mean, it's our nature. If you look at it's like a dog with a bone. It's like a baby with a toy. We're clingy little monkeys. We're the story of the monkey and the cherries. Do you know that? Do you know
no.
that story?
No.
Well, this is a Sufi teachings tale, and it's about a monkey and there's a hunter of monkeys. And what he does is he takes a jar with a thin neck and he puts it out there in the forest. And of course the monkey puts his hand into the jar and grabs onto the cherries. Now, the way this is such a clever trap is because the hunter knows monkeys. And the monkey doesn't want to let go of the cherries, so his hand's stuck in the jar. And he can't run away because his hand's stuck in the jar. So the hunter just walks over there, taps him on the elbow, and forces the hand to release and pulls it out of the jar. And so the monkey is literally trapped by the fact that he can't let go of those cherries. Now, I've butchered this, and this is a reason why you need to read the Sufi teaching tales. I think this may be in Tales of the Dervishes or in one of the others. So you really need to go through that series seriously. And what you'll discover is the first time you read them, you go, I don't know. There's a few good ones in here, but most of them just kind of, I don't know. They don't appeal to me. But then you grow some more, and you read them again in 6 months or a year. And then all of a sudden, twice as many start making sense. And then you read them again in another year or two or whatever, depending on what your urgency is or what your desires are. And now they say something totally different to you. They have a totally different meaning than they did before. And so maybe instead of identifying with a monkey, you identify with a hunter. It's not a great example, but do you see what I mean? And so so it's attachment, it's the clinging that is our animal nature. So we're in a very peculiar situation because we have brains. We have the same limbic system as the monkey. We have the same cerebral cortex as the monkey. We have a very similar visual cortex. We have the same parietal cortex. The only thing that makes us different than the monkeys is a little bit more frontal cortex here, as far as we know, and probably on the left hemisphere, on this side right here, we have a language cortex that's more evolved. So we have a little bit more of this guy. But other than that, we're monkeys. And so we're in this extraordinary situation where we're half monkey and half angel, and the purpose of life is an evolution. See, because consciousness is evolving, and so individually and collectively we're moving to higher consciousness. There was a time when all of these things would have seemed ridiculous to basically everybody because everybody was beating each other with a club and eating each other, right? Now we're more sophisticated. We do it with I won't go into that, but we at least we realize it's wrong, or most of us realize it's wrong. But more and more people are becoming more and more conscious, and you can see it in the preoccupations of our culture. We don't want to be racist. We don't want to be greedy. We don't want to be unjust. We don't want to do these things. Now, the wisdom and how we go about changing things, that's a whole different matter. But the point is this, is that you are evolving. I'm evolving. Everyone's evolving unless they're devolving, unless they're dying, or unless they're just the walking dead.
Okay.
So the point is this, that as you evolve your consciousness, these things will become less and less of an issue. All right, and that's your job, in my opinion. All right, next question.
Yeah, so these are related to thoughts. Uh, are reflex actions based on movement of thoughts?
Which reflex actions?
No, sorry.
I mean, if you hit the knee with a hammer, it's thought, but it's not in the way we usually think of thought. And we're learning from people like Michael Levin and Carl Friston that every tissue in our body, every cell has its own mind. It has its own goals. It has its own purposes. It has its own agenda. And one of the ways we're going to be able to cure cancer is that we're going to be able to realign the goals of cancer with our own goals instead of trying to kill it with chemicals. Much more sophisticated way of approaching this. So, but when you hit the knee or the elbow with a hammer, and you get the reflex, or the forearm, or the kneecap, the patella, and the leg bounces out. You hit it with a hammer and the leg bounces out. You know what I'm talking about? That reflex we typically would not say involves the mind. And we can be conditioned, like who was it? Pavlov showed us. You could turn on a light and give the dog some meat and do that a few times, let's say a red light. And pretty soon all you have to do is turn on the red light and the dog starts to salivate. That's a conditioned reflex. And you can do that with humans too. If you say, hey, we're going to give you popcorn every time you walk into the movie theater, then when you walk into the movie theater, you're going to want popcorn. It's conditioned. And then we have the more sophisticated ones called variable schedule of reinforcement, like we see on slot machines and like we see on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts and on these different social media things that are engineered to addict us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
With your question about reflexes, there are basic reflexes that are physiological. Then there's classically conditioned reflexes that are somewhat physiological, but they have a stimulus that's artificial, like you walk into the movie theater and you want popcorn. And then you have variably scheduled reinforcement, like in slot machines, TikTok, social media, and those are highly, highly addicting. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
So, in a way, they are mechanical in nature, right?
Yeah, you could say that roughly, okay, close enough.
Wait, what do you mean by close enough? Is there some free will
Well,
that
there's some people
a
who say
person
that,
can have?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, let's do it again. Let's start with the question. Question.
Yeah, so another question was like, how does I know that what I decided was through my free will?
Okay, but before we go
Like,
there,
can
hold on to that
that
question, but I
person
want
have
to
a
go
wrong?
back to the mechanical question. Do you think the body is
Yep,
a machine?
yep.
Do you
So,
think the body is a machine?
yeah.
Do you think the brain is a machine?
If they are unconscious, I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we'll say it's mechanical. All right. Now, next question. Next.
Yeah, so the next question was like, how does I know that what I decided was through my free will?
Great question. To answer it, I'd have to know
Like,
who the. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just pointing out an example, like if I have to decide between a number between 1 and 100, then how can I prove that I arrived at that choice through my own free will?
Okay.
Can that ever be done at all?
Good question. So, if I asked you to choose a number between 1 and 100, how would you know that you chose the number between 1 and 100 using your free will?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to answer that, we'd have to know who you are. Who are you?
Who am I?
Mm-hmm. Are you a
I
body?
don't know. I just know that I can feel pain. I can see things. I can
You can feel pain.
feel
Can your
pleasure.
body feel pain without you? Yes.
I don't know.
All right. Well, do you feel that you're you when you're in non-dreaming sleep?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, can you repeat the question
Okay.
again?
So, okay, everything hinges on this you that we're talking about because you're the one who's asking about your free will. And so my question to you is who
Yeah.
or what are you, first of all? That we have to decide that first. Are you a body? Are you a mind? Are you a leg? Are you an arm? Let me ask you
I
this.
am
Are you a
my
leg?
mind.
Are you a leg or do you have a leg? Simple questions. They're not trick questions. Are you a leg or do you have a leg?
Hello.
Yes, can you hear
I
me?
can't hear you.
Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Technical problems.
I
I
I
can hear
think your
I can hear a lovely
voice is
animal.
cutting up a lot.
Do you want to switch
Like
microphones?
it's a bit delayed. Sorry.
Do you want to switch microphones?
Yeah, yep, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I don't know how long he'll be gone. There's a series I've started. There's two of them. A series on the Tao Te Ching. And those of you that are interested in the Tao Te Ching or in the way.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Are we all set?
Yeah.
Okay. Just let me finish a little statement I was making while you were gone. The way, which is the foundation of Buddhism and Confucianism and gotten a lot else because it's been in continuous use for 2,500 years. You may maybe like that series. It's elsewhere. You can find it on my channel. Okay, go ahead. So we're talking about free will, and I asked you, are you a leg or do you have a leg?
I have a leg.
Okay.
Set.
Do you have an arm or
I
are you an
did.
arm?
Sorry. Uh, hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did that analysis.
Okay, well just let
Like
me
I'm
ask
not
you,
sure,
but
but
not everyone has. So let me ask you, are you a brain or do you have a brain?
this is a bit difficult. I
O-
have my brain.
Okay. So who is you that has the brain? And then we can talk about your free will.
I I don't know.
There you go.
Honestly,
So
I
so
don't
so
know.
I can't really answer this question about free will unless we're talking about the same thing. Okay? And so you need to figure out who you are and
Yes.
then ask me, do I have free will, and tell me who you are. Okay?
So regarding that, what are the instruments to investigate this real self? Like the
Okay.
way I see it right now, I only have two instruments: thoughts and my real self itself.
Thoughts and your
How can
real
I
self. Okay.
use either of these?
Okay, you can use the first attention and you can use the second attention. The first attention is your thoughts and everything that can be named. Everything that
Yes.
you can give a name to. Okay? Your second attention is the rest. It's the realm of intuition and fluid, kind of non-conceptual thought, and thoughts that involve things that you can't name, you can't really get your hands around. Things like love, things like consciousness, things like, it's the constant. And so you use both of these in tandem. And so for someone like you're an intelligent man, and you're motivated. So you can start to use some of the tools that are used by the Buddhist tantrics, the Mahayana, the Nyingma, what's the other word for them? The Tantrianas, it's called the Vajrayana, yeah. And Hinduism is also full of these things. So there are tutelaries that you can use and use to help you.
Okay.
Do you know what a tutelary is?
No.
Okay. Don't say yes if you don't understand what I'm saying. So look up tutelary and read the definition for folks.
Definition is serving as a protector, guardian, or patron.
Get a better definition than that. Where is that definition from?
It's the first result that I got after.
Yeah, don't go to the first result. Go to a respectable dictionary. Go to Oxford, perhaps. Of course, after about 1970, they started to change it all up to fit an ideology. So, if you can, go to a dictionary before the 1970, even before the 60s. Keep looking, and we'll do that. Okay. For example, the word psychiatrist meant doctor of the soul. And then they changed it because no one believed in God or soul. So they changed it to doctor of the mind. Keep going. All right. What do you got?
So let me just check the Oxford Dictionary.
It's a noun.
Yeah. I think the teaching and instruction that one person gives to another. Wait, that's...
Take your time. Slow down.
Tutelary, I would say. As a noun, it's like a word belonging to one or one of the major forms of classes in any numerous languages. No, this is something else. A tutelary power suggests deity.
Deity? Is that all it says?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I'm gonna define it for folks because it doesn't sound like the Oxford folks.
Yeah, sure.
So a tutelary is any representation, because we can't envision God. We can't envision the way. We can't envision the Nagual or and even in Islam they won't even allow you to try and make a picture of Allah. That's ridiculous, right? It is ridiculous. Or Yahweh in Judaism. So we found that as an expedient, if we're really trying to wake people up, and this is Tantra, so it's not for everybody, but for some people, they find that if they use a tutelary, for some it could be the Virgin Mary, for others it could be Tara, for others it could be a representation of Krishna, for others it could be Ganesh, for others it could be the man in green in Sufism. And basically these are intermediary tutelaries that one can address and visualize in the mind and use as guides. So in my practice, I was initiated in the Green Tara, and she served as my tutelary, and I learned to visualize her in my mind through hours and hours of practice, and then I emulated her characteristics. She was a kind, generous, loving, serene, patient, just extraordinary tutelary. She's the manifestation of the Buddha, right? So we have all these different kinds of Buddhas, because not everybody can relate to this old guy sitting there, in the lotus with with one mudra and one expression. And so what we learned over the centuries and centuries and centuries, millennia really, is that in shamanic practice, in tantric practice, in Toltec practice, Nagualismo, and in other advanced courses that are interested in getting you there rapidly, that the use of one of these figures to serve as something you can get your head around, right? Because God is too big. It's too, and also God doesn't have characteristics that we can identify like that. So a tutelary serves as an intermediary object of contemplation and inspiration, something like that. And I haven't done it justice. You could write a book on it, but that's the general direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had one question.
Okay, good. Question.
How is it? Yeah. Yeah. So how is tutelary different or similar to daemons? Daemon.
A daemon is a tutelary. Yeah, so the Greek gods are basically, they're used a little bit differently because they weren't necessarily trying to wake up, although quite a few of them did, and we don't know about the details of that practice, at least I don't. But yeah, a daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N, that's an outdated word for something like a tutelary, yes.
Got it. Because I think for me personally, that kind of guides me a lot, and
Excellent.
Also makes me aware of what I am doing, whether I'm getting overwhelmed, and realize these things.
Excellent, excellent. So you use this as an expedient, a temporary means, and then what happens is either you merge with the tutelary, or the tutelary merges with God. But the tutelary is already God because that's the way you've created it in your mind, right? You're using the second attention. This is really important, folks. This is really important because there's a lot of confusion around this. Using the second attention, you can create these very helpful, useful, wise, infinitely patient and kind and loving and all the attributes that you would wish on yourself. You can learn them from your tutelary. And then you can merge with the tutelary, which is what happens in the Vajrayana. Okay?
This, I think,
Follow up?
know, but this reminds me of that foreword by Thomas Cleary in The Secret of the Golden Flower, where he discusses about 4 scenarios regarding guest and the host.
Oh, excellent, 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 excellent. Okay, yeah, let's go there. Let me grab that book.
Yes.
Beautiful, but a little bit difficult text. Most people only need 8 pages called Turning the Light Around and Tuning the Spirit. And then from there you can go on further. So turning the light around and tuning the breathing. 8 pages. I've done a couple of YouTubes on this methodology, which is extremely potent, by the way. Okay, so where are we? In the intro?
Yeah. No, in the afterword.
Oh, good. You're reading the afterword. Excellent,
this.
excellent, excellent. Where in the afterword?
Let me just check. I think the place where it discusses about the host and the guest.
All right. Well, while you find it, I'm going to start explaining what I can do. But Clary's infinitely better at this than I am. Okay. So one of the ways of visualizing the spiritual path, one of them, is the notion that there's the host, which is God, which is truth, which is the substrate, which is the source, which is the Tao, which is the Nagual, which is Allah, so on and so forth. There's this, the source of all things. and more. And then there's the guest. There's us. We're just guests here. And then there's several iterations. Like when someone first finds Jesus, for example, now they have the host is inside the guest. The person has the host inside the guest. I have Jesus in my heart. Keep going. Did you find it?
No. Yeah, I think it's around page 146.
Okay. And then the next step.
Yeah, I think.
The next step would be maybe I shouldn't use this book. Let's see. Okay, let's just go to clarity in the afterword to this book. Because this is also a Sufi as well as a Buddhist and a Taoist presentation. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's on the page 146.
Okay.
Like it should start. The para should start with for application of the golden flower mind awakening method, one of the most useful instructional devices in Chan Buddhism. Yeah.
Okay, so let me read this. So I'm going to start with the host within the guest is the first stage, because I just described that.
Yes.
Okay, the host within the guest, that's like having Jesus in your heart, right? Or having Allah in your heart. The host within the guest is the first stage of turning and this is Chan. Oh, here we go. Oh, okay. So this is Chan Buddhism, this particular description. Chan Buddhism is the foundation of Zen Buddhism. And Chan itself is based on flower ornament Buddhism, which came before it. So we have Huayan Buddhism, flower ornament Buddhism. We have Chan Buddhism in China, or Zen Buddhism in Japan. And then we have the Near Eastern Buddhism of the Tibetans and the Nepalese in those areas. So, for application of the golden flower and mind awakening method, one of the most useful instructional devices in Chan Buddhist teaching explains the two minds in terms of the four relations between host and guest. All right, so we're going to have four different relationships between host and guest. To focus them in the mind all at once, these four relations are expressed in mnemonic phrases: the guest within the guest, the host within the guest within the host, and the host within the host. This is just mind-blowingly beautiful and simple. All right. The guest within the guest, that's stage one. Go ahead, question.
Can you explain what guest and host are?
The guest is you. The host is God.
Yes. Got it.
Got it? Or the guest is you and the host is Buddha. Or the guest is you and the host is the Nagual, or the Way, or the Tao, and so on and so forth. Or Brahma. Okay?
Yes.
And these teachings are for people that are seeking enlightenment, awakening and more. Okay. The guest with it, and please stop me for questions, because if you have questions, other people are going to have questions. The guest within the guest is the state of the ordinary mind going from one mood, state, or subpersonality to another, alienated from conscious contact with the host, which is behind the scenes. So this is the ordinary unconscious person. They're walking around. One day they're happy, one day they're sad, one day they're angry, one day they're glad. They just go around from one thought to another thought. They see something on TikTok or Instagram, and their thoughts go there. And then there's something else comes up, and their thoughts go there. They have no control. They have no self. They're just like zombies, guest within guest, human within human. It's just like the normal state of the lost, confused human. And they usually suffer too. That's the bitch of it all. Okay. So they go from one mood, state, or subpersonality to another, alienated from conscious contact with the host behind the scenes. All right? That's God behind the scenes. Now, so that's one. That's guest within guest. I recommend writing these down if you can. The host within the guest is the first stage of turning the light around. When contact with the original mind is established, even as the individual is passing through shifting moods and personalities. So here you found Jesus, or you have a tutelary, you found Tara, you found Buddha, you found something to believe in besides yourself, right? That's points towards the divine. I mean, it's not just another ideology. It's a step towards truth. And even though your mind still wanders all over the place, you have inside you, somehow or another, you've been one of the fortunate ones, and you have within inside you the host, the host. It's like an innkeeper. And this is how this evolved from people, state, and ends. But I digress a little bit. We may come back to it. Now, so we have guest within guest, and now we have host within guest. Now we start getting to the meat of to the higher levels of understanding, and we have guest within the host. The guest within the host is a more mature kind of attainment, at which the individual can enjoy free access to thought and its products, including ideas, moods, and personalities, without being deceived by them or bound to them. So this is really cool, because this would be like having the observing ego. All right, and I discussed that elsewhere. But basically, you've moved from guest within guest to host within guest, and now you're guest within host. And the guest within host is able to, so you see something that makes you sad. You don't get lost in it. You have a negative thought, or a series of negative thoughts. You don't get lost in them. You realize that they're just coming and going. So with practice over months and years, you start to be able to see that your thoughts and your moods just come and go like everything else. They're like clouds in the sky. They aren't you. You are not a body, and you are not thoughts. You're neither of those things. You're actually the foundational awareness, the source of all things. The kingdom of heaven is within you. It's nearer than your jugular vein, right? And this is articulated by every spiritual tradition that goes this far. And then the next step after guest within host, and so you're free. You're much freer now. You're in the second attention and of sorts, and you can watch all the vicissitudes, all the ups and downs of your life come and go, and they don't particularly bother you because you know they're not going to last. That's one way of stating it. Now we get to the goal, and the goal is, well, let me just read one more time that guest within host. The guest within host is a more mature level of attainment, at which the individual can enjoy free access to thought and its products, including ideas, moods, personalities, without being deceived by them or bound to them. So we have different personalities, whether we acknowledge it or not. I mean, you can wake up with one personality and end up with another personality by the end of work or the end of the day. But you're free. You can observe all of those coming and going. So that's a good level of attainment. And it very, very accessible to anybody who so desires. But then the goal of goals is finally, the host within host is the original spirit itself, the primal source of consciousness, in which is found the turning point on which psychic liberty hinges. In one sense, conscious experience of the host within host follows the realization of host within guest, yet in a deeper sense, the host within host is not only at the pinnacle, but even at the basis of total experience of the golden flower practice. So he's making it a little bit more complicated than I think he needs to. And his point's a good one, though, but let's just talk about host within host. So this is when you've attained the way, you've accorded with the way. Now you're working with the will of God. You are an expression of God. You're an expression of the Tao, of the order of things, the will of Allah. This is what in Islam is called submission, where you merge with the will of Allah. That's the aspiration. Now he makes a more esoteric point, which is the fact that even guest and all of these are within the realm of God, right? All of these are within the realm of truth. And that in the secret flower practice, he states here that in a deeper sense, the host within host is not only at the pinnacle, but even at the basis of the total, but even at the basis. So if you're going to get host within you, that's only through the will of Allah, right? You don't find God or Jesus without grace. And so is this making sense? And this is how the beauty of the Chan, the Zen, the Taoist, and the Buddhist understanding. And people think that it's not monotheistic. They just don't understand. But go ahead, questions to follow up.
Yeah, so you mentioned grace. What is grace?
Base?
Grace.
Oh, great. Grace is
Grace.
movement of the spirit. Grace is when you're so let's use you could use anyone in the world, but let's use Eckhart Tolle. Grace brought him to his knees, and then grace freed him. And you see this in AA all the time. People who think that they're being destroyed by the alcohol, but in fact they're being revived. They're being born because of the alcohol. Now, because in that monstrous struggle, that the struggle against alcohol, if you're a real alcoholic, that takes a warrior. And so these guys and women and men, they become warriors because they must become warriors. They must become impeccable, or they're going to drink again. And if they drink again, they know they're going to lose everything. Forgive me. And so through that grace, they're lost and then they're found, you know. Do you know the song Amazing Grace?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you should play that song. It's a beautiful spiritual, written by some guy who knew what he was talking about. Because it's only through the grace of God that any of us get anywhere. It's only through the grace of God that we're even born, that we exist. And so at every level, of course, God or the way or Allah or Brahma, he's there the whole time in every iteration. But for us simple-minded humans, we think, okay, there's the stage where you're just walking around, you're just a normal guy, you know, drinking your beers on the weekend and, you know, smoking your dope or whatever. And you realize that after, you know, you're getting too old for that, and you're starting to feel bad. And you're realizing that, hey, my life kind of sucks. So you're guest within guest, but you're still a victim to whatever video game or whatever, you know, thing that captures you. You know, it could be cars, it could be watches, it could be Las Vegas, it could be who knows what it is, but you're always trying to find an escape. So you're at that age. Then you get a little older and a little bit wiser and mature, and you go, wait a minute, this is not going to work. This is not sustainable. I can look over there and I can see what I'm going to turn into. And so through the grace of spirit, you know, you get a notion of that there's a divine, and that's represented as the divine being within you, the host within guest. All right? Because God is the host and we're the guest. And these are just expedients so to make things easier to understand. Then, having realized that, you try and align yourself within the way, and your practice matures, and you become a guest within host. So you're doing whatever you can to be a warrior, to align with the will of Brahma, God. And then finally, in the third attention, the line between you and the host vanishes, and you realize the truth of the whole thing. And let me tell you something, there is nothing more worthwhile to do with a human life on this earth. There just isn't. Does that make sense? I mean, that's enlightenment. Yes. That's enlightenment. That's full enlightenment, host within host.
Yes.
Okay? So that's the program right there in four lines. This is the brilliance of Clary. I mean, the man spent a lifetime studying and working with himself first, and then translating and doing. You'll see in a couple of 100 years he'll be considered a saint universally. Right now, people can't believe him because he translates Arabic and Japanese and Chinese and ancient Celtic dialect. He was a genius in Arabic. He was a genius in that realm, but also in another realm of his own personal development and the means by which to help those who helped him. It's a whole tradition of humanity. It's our common heritage, and we need to pay a little bit more attention to it. Money is not all there is in this world. Money and power are not all there is by a long shot. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm starting to preach. Go ahead. Next question.
So next question, I don't know. I was reading a bit ahead in the afterword, and I think clearly describes or talks about a story regarding Chuang Chou,
Chuang
about
Chou?
how he once dreamed, Chuang Chou, about
Yes.
how he once dreamed that he was a butterfly,
Okay.
having a wonderful time, fluttering about from flower to flower on the zephyrs of spring. But on awakening, he found that he was no longer a butterfly. So he asked
No,
this
upon
question
awakening,
like,
he wasn't sure if he was a man who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or whether he was a butterfly dreaming he was a man.
yeah,
May I
yeah,
read it? May I read it just so it comes?
same thing I can
May I read it also just so it comes across?
Yeah.
Okay. So this story
Yes.
is also in the Chuang Chou of this book of the Essential Tao, and it's on page. I'll tell you later. All right, but in this book, it's mentioned in the afterword. It's a very famous story. Okay, I'll just read it directly. A parallel story from the Taoist tradition is the famous butterfly dream of the sage of Chuang Chou. Chuang Chou was a great Taoist sage. In this classic tale, the philosopher relates that he dreamed he was a butterfly, having wonderful time fluttering around about from flower to flower on the zephyrs of spring. So it's this beautiful spring day, and he's floating around over the pasture of the flowers as a butterfly. Upon awakening from this pleasant reverie, however, he found that he was no longer sure whether he was a man who had dreamed he was a butterfly, or whether he was a butterfly now dreaming he was a man. And let's just read a little bit more clarity on this. The issue of this story is not its superficial question of which psychic contents to identify as a self, but in the act of recalling attention to the turning point revealed in between states, the formless opening or aperture through which the real self of the formless host can be seen and experienced in its own purity and freedom. So in the Tolle text, the way the Tolle text would put this is, there's a line between the first and the second attentions. It's imaginary. Well, yeah, everything's imaginary. Okay, so it's between the first and secondary attentions, between the right and the left sides. But then there's a passage between those two. That's one of the pivots. But then there's also a pivot between mundane existence and host within host, where everything changes, where you're now part of the original spirit, the actual substrate, and it's not a describable experience. But what is your question about this?
I myself had this question, like, what I am, like, am I dreaming myself?
Yes. Yes, you are dreaming yourself. I mean, dreaming, of course, is just a word. It's not like you're sleeping and dreaming. You're walking around and dreaming. Of course, where else could the world be? Just think about it. Where else could the world be? And even this is a dream. That's the killer. So this is just a temporary expedient. This is a tutelary for the scientific minded. But even the body is dreamt. Even everything is dreamt. That's not the right word. It's imagined. And even that's not the right word. It is. And it is outside of time and space. So it always has been from our perspective, and it always will be from our perspective. But go ahead. What were you asking? Whether you were dreaming?
So, yeah, no. So if I am dreaming, then the feeling of pain that I get during this dream, like, why is it given more importance, or why is it
Because
even
you're
clear?
confusing the eyes that's dreaming. So when I say you're dreaming, you think it's your mind, your ego, your brain, that you're dreaming with your imaginary self. That your ego is the one that's dreaming.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's difficult to understand. You got to get further. You got to get. Okay, you've left guest and guest. Now you're in host and guest, right? And now, to be guest within host, you must be an impeccable warrior. I mean, this is where the Buddhist paramitas come in. This is where the Christian ethics come in. This is where, basic, generosity, patience, effort, contemplation, meditation, or whatever else other practice you want to use. All those guys come in, and courage comes in. And this is where in Islam, there's a whole list of things that you take care of the poor, the sick, you visit them. You're humane to your fellow man. You add to society. You don't just take from it. You become a warrior. And love becomes your battle cry, right? But love with a capital L. And so, and from that, now you set up the conditions to move from not only from guest within guest and host within guest to guest within host, which is what we're talking about right now, guest within host. But now you set up the conditions for host within host, which is waking up fully. Right? And then you got to mature, and you got to learn stuff. So you don't get in your own way, you don't get in other people's way. All right, sir? Any other questions?
Yes.
Before we stop?
No.
Yes, sir?
Yes, sir. And really sorry for a lot of technical difficulties. I
No,
don't
it's
know
all
what's
right.
happening.
It's okay. You're learning. As long as you're learning, there are no mistakes.
Yeah.
Well, that's not entirely true, but you catch my drift. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Question.
Sorry. I think I had no questions.
Okay, so that's it? You don't have any more questions?
No.
Okay. All right, sir. All right, well, you're making progress. Good for you. So now what you need to do is just be a warrior. And a warrior doesn't give up. And a warrior keeps on fighting. And even if he's depressed, even if he's out of his mind with grief, he's still a warrior. A warrior never loses his mind. A warrior is constant.
Your tweet.
Okay, and so now you just need to keep going. Seriously.
Yes.
And those were great things you brought up. So thank you very much on behalf of everybody. All right, sir?
Yeah.
Keep the faith.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Grow your mind. Be a warrior. Right?
Yes.
And of course that means guarding your mind, because otherwise they'll trash it. Right? Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.